what kind of stress, the different changes that take place physically, mentally, socially, then psychologically. So how all these changes takes place. So how human beings, they learn, they grow up from one part of their lives to another part of life. Then how they communicate, how we speak, the importance of language, the importance of language. We already have seen in even in MPC-1 block 4. So all this you will see in this paper. Then next is, yeah, so in this topic again in 1.2, you'll find the concept of development. So development describes the growth of humans throughout the lifespan from conception to death. It refers to development as patterns of change over time. It does not just involve the biological or the physical growth, but also the cognitive and social aspects related to the development. Then we are also going to understand the scientific study of how human development happens, the chromosomes, the XY chromosomes, and then the combination, and then the babies, or XX chromosome or YYXY, or whatever the chromosomes, the combination. So because of that, the baby is conceived and how changes takes place. That's what you are going to see here. And then later on we'll also understand the cognitive development, the social development, physical development. It happens from conception till death. The what are the physical development. So all this you are going to see. Now there are certain goals of development. So goals of development changes self-actualization. So it plays a very important role in one's mental health. Growth is very important. Otherwise, you might have seen children who have aged, but still their mental ability is of some young children. So we can say that mentally or intellectually they have not been developed due to certain reasons, due to environmental factors or due to neurological disorders or neuropsychological illness. So all these are what we're going to study here. And then we will also see the difference between growth and development. So growth refers to the development of the children from birth to adolescence. From newborns to teenagers, parents often have questions if the children are developing normally. Then even WHO has coordinated uh, an international effort to develop child growth standard for infants and young children, that is from 0 to 5 years. So there's a process of child development which makes a growth curve. So growth curve is defined as a statistical curve derived from plotting weight and height against chronological age for comparing an individual child's growth pattern with an average age of growth. In short, we can say that personality is influenced by many factors, and these factors are involved in the development of the personality as a child. Then we also have, so that is the physical growth they're talking about. Then the second factor they're talking about is the personality, the child's experiences in the society and the environment. So most of the children, they come from certain society where they have a vast experience, their surrounding, they have a large experience, vast experience, and many exposure has been given to them because of the environment, by the teachers, by the family, friends, neighbors. And either and there's some children who can even learn from music, television, or incidental remarks. Children, they are very good at imitation, so they very quickly learn. So the kind of environment, the situation, the culture, the social support has been provided, that's helped the child to learn various things. Then plays is again, it's the third factor which is involved in the development of a child. So we have already talked about the cognitive, the social, the environmental, and neighborhood. And here is the biological factor also. So a child is not going to remain the same forever. So it grows from one stage to another. Like, even our body is aging now. Not aging, but it's growing. We all must be in our early 30s or maybe late 20s, or maybe more than that. So this is how our body grows. And then we also learn how to express ourselves, communicate with others. We learn to maintain our relationships, we care for others, how we love, how to work. So all these are part of growth, the concept of growth. Then there are four areas in which the child's growth and development takes place. The first one is the physical, then next is psychological, so cognitive, social, emotional, sexual identity, and gender identity. So we have already talked about physical. So we grow as a child, we grow in height, weight, our appearances changes. So every 2 3 years, there's a difference in our personality, in our physical abilities. So like we progress towards adulthood, so including crawling, walking, running, writing, motor coordination, eye hand coordination. All this growth takes place at the physical level. Then at the psychological and cognitive level, we have children, they develop psychologically and cognitively as their brains absorbs more information, and they learn information, how to use that information. So as a children, we have to think on purpose, and then Piaget's theory will be talking about. So our cognitive development has to be done. So we learn how to solve problems, we talk, we complete mental tasks, we remember numbers, we use computers. So all this takes place at the psychological and the cognitive level. Then social and emotional. So children, they learn to play, they learn to work, they learn to live with other people in the family, friends, teachers, employees, and we understand feelings, we understand emotions. We want to become, as a child, you will learn this in Erickson's theory also. As a child, we want to become an independent individual. Somebody has joined. Let me admit. So that's one thing. So this is the social and emotional development. Then sexuality and gender identity. So we, uh, for many years, as a child, we don't know what our gender identity is. But yes, over the period of time, we get to know that yes, we are boys or we're girls, or we handle our sexuality, and then we balance our sexual desires and appropriate behavior according to the need of the society. So that's what they're talking about. Then critical periods during life, during development. There are certain periods during which our development is very important, and here are some studies that was given by Baltis 1987, Crane 2000, Educational Foundation 2001, Smith 2009. So all these people, they have done certain research, and they've talked about the connection between growth and development. Then understanding lifespan development. So we understand lifespan development through certain forces. They have talked about certain forces, identified certain forces, and they're talking about the biological force. So our development, it happens, again, we have talked about biological, social, all these factors, but you might notice that we develop over the period of years, based on the four interactive forces. So it is the biological force. Every time our body is going to develop or grow, right? So because of genetics or health conditions, then there's this prenatal condition, brain maturation, puberty, menopause, facial expression, change in cardiovascular functioning, diet, exercise. All these are some biological forces. Then next is psychological forces, the internal, perceptual, cognitive, emotional factors. Then socio-cultural factors, again the society, the culture, family, peers, co-workers, everybody.
Yes, Miss.
It helps for the growth. Yes.
Good morning and good morning, colleagues. Just when I was reading the handout with respect to growth and development, right? It spoke to self-actualization being an essential element and also being essential to us saying that there's some amount of growth. Referencing to Maslow's theory, where he said that only a few persons in life will actually achieve or feel self-actualized, how does that how does that then fit into what is being posited in the handout?
Okay, it doesn't mean that only few individuals would be there, but there are only few individuals who realize their potential, their highest potential. So they are not talking in terms of self-actualization in the literal sense, but they have mentioned in the sense that until unless we realize our potential, we are not able to achieve certain changes. That's what they're talking about. So if you have to make any important decision in your life, if you want to understand your if you want to have a good personal and social adjustment and understand your desires, your interests, then you need to understand your highest potential also. That's what they're talking about. Okay,
Miss,
come to.
the
Yes.
part that says critical period of during development, could that refer to Erickson's stages of development where you talk about trust versus
Yes.
mistrust? Okay.
Yes, 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 exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next issues in lifespan development is, I mean, they're talking about the kind of research. So you might have seen for intelligence. I mean, there were no. I mean, they've not talked about the intelligence in children. That intelligence is not just limited. They've not talked about in a particular age group. So intelligence has been, it's not just limited to a number of group or number of people or a number or a particular age group. If they're talking about in general, but in lifespan development we cannot talk like that. We have to talk about the development since conception, the development that takes place till death. So that's what it's an issue, continuity versus discontinuity, because none of the individual, because we cannot let somebody conceive a baby and then study till the person dies. So it is really impossible. So that's what they're talking about, continuity and discontinuity. So there are various so people, developmental psychologists, they have studied people based on they've studied individuals on different age group. That's what they're talking about. Then stability and change. uh, though see, we have been growing as a person. Like I am a lady, I'm a woman. So uh, I am growing day by day, but I am still the same person, right? It's not that I'm growing and I'll change. So stability and change, that's what they're talking about. There are certain characteristics of me which is going to remain throughout my life, but still every day I'm developing and I'm exhibiting new skills, new techniques, whatever it is. So growth is there, but still I'm the same person. It's not that after 5 years I'll become some other lady or some other woman, no, or some other person. I'll be the same, but still various changes takes place in my life. So that is also one of the issue developmental psychologists have identified: stability and change. Stability is there, but there are various different other changes that people, uh, you know, uh, change and experience. Then nature versus nurture. So a lot of study has been done that
Miss, before you
what
go on, sorry,
yes.
Miss. So there
Mhm.
was reference to plasticity. So I was
Yes.
trying to understand the differences uh, between the plasticity and what you just talked about, instability versus stability, plasticity. Miss, could you clarify
Yes,
there for
yes.
me?
We'll come to that. We'll come to that also. So plasticity we do have in the topic. We'll talk about that. We can talk about nature and nurture also. Various researches has been done, and then they find this a very interesting topic, that what governs an individual's personality. Is it the nature, or is it the environment, or is it the genetics or the environmental factors? So I mean, lot of research has been done, which makes us a better individual. It is the nature or is it the nurture? So a lot of research has been done, and I leave upon you all. You can decide what is best, which is more supporting in terms of development. Then we have stages of development. There is the stages of development that has been provided by expert, and then they talked about childhood and adolescence, birth to age 20. Then it talks about early childhood transition by age 3. Then early childhood, yes, early childhood transition by age 3, that is from birth to age 20. Then early childhood aged 17 to 45, middle adulthood 45 to 65, late adulthood 60 plus. So this research has been done by Tennant and Pogson 1995. They've already talked about this, and uh, you can definitely read about them. And then domains of human development. So what are the different domains? Like psychological domains, we have adjustment, cognitive domain. So for psychological domain, it would be like adjustment, then what is good and what is bad for us. As a mother, she's going to think for us. Psychological domain, cognitive domain, again, when we were young, what would bring the best in us through cognitively, again, that is helped by our parents. So learning, attention, perception, memory, no, all this we already have done in MPC 1. So that's what they're talking about, and it's the research by Boyd and B 2006. Then we can talk about characteristics of lifespan development. So lifespan development,
Excuse me, miss.
yes.
I noticed there's an overlap in the age groups. Any could you shed any light on that, please?
Which group are you talking about? This? Hello.
Yes, yes, that's exactly what I was referring to. I made an observation that the age groups overlap.
Hmm. Or not an overlap. It doesn't mean that after 20 only you'll get into adulthood. So it could be different for different individuals. It doesn't mean that after 45 only you'll enter into middlehood. It differ from individual to individual. So see, lifestyle psychology is something which is not. I mean, it doesn't just stick to numbers. It depends from individual to individual. So maybe your brain developed at the age of 2, or maybe there are individuals whose brain developed even at the age of 5. So it doesn't matter. It's just an explanation that has been given by the researchers. They're not
Thank
overlapping.
you.
Yeah. So
One other, just one
hmm,
other contribution is on that same point. Can I?
please repeat. I didn't hear you.
Yeah, yeah, I was just wanted to make another contribution on that point. Question. Can I?
Yes, please. Yes, please speak.
Right. I observed in some just discussions I've been listening to that there are different the psychologists have certain seems to be some disagreement as to whether it happens development takes place continuously or whether it's disjointed or it stops and starts. I wonder if that also can explain why the overlap exists in that presentation.
Okay, no, see, when development takes place, it's not just, I mean, that's what I said. That even if a child there's a child who has developed till the age of 5, psychologically, and there would be children who has developed at the age of 2 only. So there could be overlap. It doesn't, in psychology or even in specifically in lifespan psychology, it doesn't mean that we have a particular age group that even between the 10 to 15 years only you'll develop, otherwise you'll not develop. That is not there. So you'll find that there's no overlapping, but we will see even in Piaget's theory also, when he talks about cognitive development, it's not just limited. He has mentioned a particular age, but near around. They're talking about a very near number. That's what they're talking about. Right. Then we can talk about the characteristics of lifespan development. Again, this research is done by Paul Baltus, and they have talked about the different capacities, the plasticity. So here it comes the term plasticity. So, so it is the ability for positive change. So according to the individual, according to the environmental demands, we change from time to time. That's what they're talking about. And they've talked about lifelong development. So according to them, lifespan development is something which is a lifelong process. It's not that after 50 years you will not grow. It's a lifelong process. Then development is multidimensional. It is multidimensional because we developed in different areas like biological, cognitive, social, emotional, and many other domains. Then it is not it is multi-directional also. So multi-directional also would be, we don't take just a single path. I mean, either we could develop biologically first and maybe cognitively later. So it is multi-directional. It's not just it's not going to go in one way. It will take different areas, or some in some areas we will show more development. In some areas we could be less developed, so that's what they're talking about. Then development is plasticity. So here plasticity, here comes the concept of plasticity, and it refers to the within person ability which is possible for a particular behavior or development. So we have an example also that has been given in regard to the brain development. So for example, infants who have a hemisphere of the brain removed shortly after birth as a treatment for epilepsy can recover the functions associated with that hemisphere as the brain reorganizes itself and the remaining hemisphere takes over those functions. So plasticity, our brain always have this tendency to develop, at a particular age group. So that's what they're talking about. And plasticity also involves the degree to which characteristics change or remain stable. So how long we are going to remain stable or how long we are going to change. Then development is also constructual. So I mean, our social support, our environment, our rural environment, all these also help us to develop, as an individual. So that's what they're talking about. Then it is multidisciplinary also. It's not just it is not just age related. Only the age related changes is not going to take place, but like I mentioned earlier, we can it is going to develop both at the psychological, social, cognitive, physical, biological, and many other factors. And development involves growth, maintenance, regulation. So for example, if today I became 20-year old, then it's not that I'm going to suddenly change and become 21. So it's going to be there. I'll be 20-year-old for a year, right? So that's what we see. Development is embedded in history also. So it's not that it is not something new. It has always been there since the I mean, since we human beings came, or uh, that is again another theory. So it has always been there. Then we have this normative graded influences. So so scientists have tried to understand. They have collected the data from the environment and they've tried to understand at what age what happens. But that is again not just limited. It cannot be constrained. It depends from individual to individual, from time to time, from place to place. So, for example, in India, we send children to school at the age of 4. Earlier, before 10 years ago, children were sent to school at the age of 4. But now parents are working, so children they are sent to play school. There was no concept of play school earlier, but now we have the concept of play school, and children they are sent to play school even at the age of 2, and 2 to 4 they will be in play school, and then after at the age of 4 they would go to school. So it's not that it is limited to a particular age group, but it changes from time to time. The normative history gated influence. So we also have some biological and environmental factors that could uh, affect our growth. So like depression, AIDS epidemic, and many other factors. So all these have you know uh, I mean, there are some biological and environmental influences that are associated with development. The non-normative events. So like in our lives, the death of a person, the death of a parent at young age, getting a serious illness, all these factors also influence our development. And there are certain injections also, hormonal injections, through which physical development can be done, but psychologically we don't have such. So that's what they're talking about. Then next we have what are the facts of development. So here we have early foundations are critical, as we know. Yes. So schools. So it is said that before the age of, I mean, there are certain researchers those who have quoted that before adulthood we should learn different languages. Maybe then we could be. It's a very critical period. So it's very good for language development or language learning. Then role of maturation and learning and development. So maturation is very important. When we develop, we mature as well at the same time. So development follows a definite and predictable pattern. So there are two laws through which we develop. One is the Fallow-Claudel law. So it means that the development spreads over the body from head to foot. And proximodistal law, it means that development spreads out from the central axis of the bodies and to extremities. So I can show you a picture for this. Maybe we have, I don't know, I think we have here. No, we don't have. Just a second. Okay, so this is one of the law and where children they develop from the head before as compared to the other part of the bodies. So the structure, the head regions is more developed as compared to the other part of the body. And then the another one is the proximodistal. Okay, anyways, you can see this picture. So here the upper part is developed first and then the lower part is developed later. But in this case, the lower part the is developed first and the head is the or the trunk is developed later. So that's what they're talking about. Then they also have talked about all individuals are different. So, like I mentioned, even if psychologists have given a particular age group that in this age the brain is going to develop or cognitive development is going to take place, but it depends. It depends from individual to individual. Then each phase of development has characteristics, behavior. I mean, all all. Mm, all individuals they adapt to environment differently. It doesn't mean that in one age group we are going to remain the same only. Then hazards and phase, there are different problems in every phase, so physical, psychological, environment, any kind of changes could take place. Then development is aided by stimulation, so stimulation or correct training should be provided to children. Culture changes at development. Every stage has social expectation and transit traditional beliefs also. So that's what they're talking about. These are some issues in lifespan development. Then the kind of research that is done in the field of lifespan development is longitudinal method, then cross-sectional method, sequential method, and time lag method. So for longitudinal method, we have one individual who has been studied for a longer period of time. So for the study of development changes in the same group or individual over a period of time. So we can take a 5-year-old child and study his behavior for maybe for 25 or for some years. So the same individual is studied for longer period of time. Then cross-sectional would be the different individuals like 5-year-old, 15-year-old, 10-year-old, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year-old. So these individuals are studied at the same time so that it is effective also because longitudinal is not that effective because we cannot keep an individual in our labs for many years and study them, right? Then we have sequential method. So another to overcome longitudinal and cross-sectional the issues of both two method, people study sequential method. So people in cross-sectional sample are tested more than once and the results are analyzed. So these individuals, I mean the 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old, the same individuals again they will be studied for a longer period of time. So it's a sequential method. So the time lag method, it is this method is studying the development of different age groups in different years again. So it's not that 5 year or 10 year or 15 year, but over here every year has been studied from conception. Infant are studied 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. So that's a time lag method. Then next we have obstacles in studying lifespan development. So representative sample. So we cannot, like I mentioned, we cannot keep an individual in a lab, or scientists cannot keep them in in their labs to study an individual. So sample is very difficult to get. Then establishing rapport with the sample with the subject. So in psychology, whenever we conduct psychological test, we need to have some rapport, some kind of rapport formation, some kind of personal rapport. Maybe the subject should be comfortable. They should be comfortable with us. We cannot randomly say, okay, let's take your test or let's conduct some kind of experiment on you. No. So we need to establish some kind of rapport. But again, that's a problem. If we establish rapport and then we conduct and the research, it will take some time. So that is why it is an issue establishing rapport for young kids. For 5-year-old child we cannot establish rapport with them until unless they know us properly, right? uh, then appropriate methodology. So you will also understand the concept of qualitative quantitative research in MPC 5 and 6. So when a research is done, we have to focus on the methodology, what kind of research method are conducted what method, through what method the research should be conducted. So it is really difficult in lifespan development which research method would be correct for what individuals. Then accuracy of data. So if we cannot study individuals for a longer period of time, then I mean, like I've already mentioned about the different methods like longitudinal, cross-sectional. So how accurate the data are? Are they providing the correct data? So that is also one of the issue. And ethical aspects, first of all. So if you want to study of the lifestyle or the development of a 5-year-old child, you can study your own children only. You cannot keep someone else. So even Piaget, he studied his own 3 children, and he came to the theory of psychosexual, yeah, cognitive theory of development. So it's really difficult. Ethical aspects are there. So here we come to the end of block one. Sorry, unit two, unit one from block one. Then we have prenatal development. Prenatal development, they are talking about the period of zygote, period of embryo, period of fetus. Right. So here is the beginning when the chromosomes they are formed. They are formed into two pairs. That is 23 from mother, 23 from father, and they are in pairs. So um, I mean, a female will have XX chromosome and males will have XY. So if XX chromosome are received from both the parent, then female will be there. Female baby will be born, and then XY, because female has the XX chromosome and males have XY chromosome. So that's how the development are done. Then yeah, so it's a boy or it's a girl. It depends on the chromosomes, right? So I think there are no such theory, but you can give a reading to them, and you can study. So this is how but the issues are with the female feticide. There are many part of the countries, or in the world, there are many countries which doesn't want a particular gender, especially in some part of the South Asian countries. So females or males, there are countries also who doesn't want a boy or something. I've read. So all these are some kind of issues, real life issues. Then uh, so when it comes to um, development, so maturation and fertilization takes place, then ovulation, fertilization, all this process takes place, and then the female, they conceive the baby. So it is conceived in the ovum, in the fallopian tube, and it has a period. So the approximate, they're in the baby is in the womb for 9 months almost, and then that is 270 to 280 days. And hereditary factors, all these environmental conditions. There are some premature babies also, like they're born in 7 months, and they're twins, the concept of twins, identical twins, fraternal twins, all this you'll get to see. Then all these are some topics on how the different stages, the period of zygote, fertilization to end of second week. So here um, all these are done. Then period of embryo, end of the second week to end of the second lunar month. So this stage is the 8th week. The baby is 8th week, and the embryo is 1.2 inches in length. The various other changes also. So kidneys and hearing problems could happen if the development is not happening properly. Then just a second, class.
Good morning to everyone.
Yes, class. So yeah, so is it getting boring?
No, miss.
No?
No, miss, we keep the track.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's my nose has been blocked, so I'm unable to speak. Anyways, I'll try. So all this you have to read, the development of voice box. It happens again at the fourth and the fifth a week. Then at week, what happened? The changes takes place like nose, jaw, lung, all this. All. I think you can read this. Is there anything to explain in this topic?
So it's pretty straightforward, miss.
Yeah.
Yes, it's quite understandable. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So we also have some other environmental factors. So we have talked about the physical characteristics that takes place over the period of time. Then we have some other characteristics like mother's disease, drugs and chemicals. So mother disease, if the mother is diabetic, that would also affect the individual. So women, they're suffering from blood poisoning, all these changes takes place and drugs and chemicals, then radiation could also damage to the fetus, can cause damage to the fetus. Abortion, if there's certain medicines, the pregnancy, people want to terminate the pregnancy, and then medicines are taken, and if that medicine has failed, but some part of the medicine gets into the baby, and then the child is born with certain defects, so this all issues takes place. Then age of the mother, so I don't know, it's a very debatable topic. Age of the mother, people have conceived even at the age of 40 or 50. So whatever, I think you can have your own understanding in your research. And nutrition and diet of the mother, so there are certain researchers also have talked about diet deficiency that can impact the female, sorry, the infant, or uh, the child in the womb. Then stress in the mother, and all this could also affect the fetus in the womb. And the RH incompatibility. So RH incompatibility is it's an inherited protein in the blood of 85% of the population. So this problem arises when the male carries the RH positive factor and the female does not carry the RH negative factors, and the child develops as RH positive. So if the sibling blood comes into contact with the mother system may manufacture antibodies to ward off the foreign RH protein. So the antibody destroys this child oxygen carrying red blood cells, a condition known as erythroblastosia, or death and mental retardation can occur. So RH positive and RH negative could, I mean, this could be a problem for the child. Then
Ma'am,
here we
excuse
come.
me.
Yes,
Hello? Yes,
yes,
ma'am.
yes,
Good morning.
yes.
There's a correction that has to be made there in the wording
Hmm.
in RH incompatibility.
Mm-hmm.
It states that the RH factor is an inherited protein found in the blood of 85% of the population. The problem arises when the male carries the RH positive factor, and it's supposed to be the female carries the RH negative factor.
Yeah, yes, it is not does not, but it does. The female has to carry RH negative, right?
Yes.
Hmm. So you
So
can
does
make
not
this.
has to come out from there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you can make this correction. So RH positive and then RH negative. That's what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. The father is RH positive, but the mother is RH negative. So the baby, let's say the baby becomes RH positive because of inheriting the father's RH factor. So the mother starts to create antibodies against the baby, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where the incompatibility occurs.
Yes. So this is also one of the issues that you'll find with the fetus. And here we come to
Miss,
the
and
end of.
the next line says, if the
uh,
sibling blood comes into contact, uh,
not sibling, the fetus. It would be
okay,
fetus.
yes. That's a correction, right, Miss?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, the fetus
thank
or the
you.
baby. Yes. Yes. You can correct that. Then next we have
Miss,
unit
just
three.
before you move on,
Yes.
Miss, is there anything to
correct that?
Yeah, that's
Any
two.
injection or anything?
Yeah, you can correct this. The female does, it should be not does not, it should be does carry. If she carries RH negative, and then this is would be the fetus or the baby, not the sibling.
No, Miss, I'm asking a question. Can doctors or anybody correct that so that the child would not be affected? The fetus.
I'm sure there might be some kind of treatment. I am not again very much sure about it, but can somebody help with this? Is anyone from the
Yes,
medical background?
yes, dear. There is an injection called the anti-D injection, immunoglobulin. It helps to like stop the effect of the mom producing those kind of antibodies against the fetus. It helps to attenuate that effect, but it does not reverse the RH factor, if you understand what I mean. So after the
Yes.
baby is, yeah, when the mom is pregnant, just so within 72 hours after delivery, or no, sorry, within 72 hours before the delivery, they should have that anti-D injection, so it would
Is it
prevent
before or
any.
after?
I think it's just within the 24 72 hours after the delivery, I believe. Sorry.
Oh,
Because this would happen when you're preparing to get your child, even in an abortion, if it happens, if you happen to have an abortion, you have to take the anti-D injection to prevent in the further pregnancies. You understand?
oh.
But
Yeah,
not
and
all of the time it would happen, because sometimes the baby they don't always produce that much effect. But there are some cases when it's very bad. So the
my follow
anti-D injection is important.
my follow-up question, would this have any effect on the child at school, like with the brain development, etc., with
What
the
the
blood?
RH incompatibility?
Uh,
Well, yeah, if the mom produces so many antibodies to ward off the protein, in some cases it's very severe. You have mild and moderate and severe. So in some
and
cases, it's very severe that it leads to death in most cases.
in the fetus, right?
Yeah.
What happens after the child come out of the mom and goes to school, and so it wouldn't have any effect on the child anymore if the child is like born good, the child missed death, everything past
Yeah,
that
no,
death, the child's
yeah,
gonna be okay.
yes, yes, yeah.
Okay,
But then
thank you so much.
you have other factors too. You have to look at to see if the child will continue with normal development, not just the RH. What if suppose a child is RH negative, they have RH incompatibility, but during delivery, let's say the mom had a issue with delivery and the baby had some sort of lack of oxygen during delivery. Maybe at that time the baby was too big and they had to use instruments or something, and that could have been harmful to the baby. So you have to look at other factors with the RH incompatibility too.
I would
So
just
it's not
like to share.
necessarily
I would just like to share this, right? It maybe can help some teachers, some doctors, whoever. We have a child. Well, it's like when the child comes to school for the first time, we will have the parents tell us something which will be in secret. I just want to share. I won't call names or anything. And the child, the mother is saying to us that she's RH negative, and his dad is the other, well, I guess is positive or some other blood group, AB or something. And the child was a C-sec child, right? And during birth, after like she had to do C-sec, and the child started bleeding out the blood, so they had to do a blood transfusion. So the child could not have speak till after like 7 years, and but the child is speaking well now. He's all grown up now. But there's some little, like let's say he might get like headaches and fever and like in between. But she was also like parents would come and they would expect teachers to be everything, doctor, nurse, everything. They want answers. So even though she might go to her doctor, she would still come back. My child, yeah, watch my child for me. This that. So sometimes we'd be very afraid that because these children have these problems during birth, and so they could collapse on us and all kind of things. So I'm happy
yeah,
I'm in this class. I'm learning.
yeah. There's a lot of factors that it's not just RH incompatibility, but with the RH incompatibility, some some fetuses are very large too, because they start to, they swell or whatever, and so these problems occur as well. Could be a myriad of problems. It's not just one. You also we have to read more on the injection because of different. I'm seeing different things here also because at where I'm working in the department where I'm working, we don't administer the NCD, but I'm seeing different weeks and so on where you give it. So I'll make a confirmation on that and I let everybody know back, right?
All
Because
right.
I'm
Thank you
seeing
so
different
much.
time frame to give this. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for allowing me to speak, Miss.
Okay, thank you everyone. So it's a really, learning for me as well. Thanks. Okay, so in here we come to unit 3. They're talking about physical hazards, and I think like already one of you mentioned that there are various other uh, complications at the time of birth. So we have talked about the various environmental factors or the various issues that could take place when the fetus is in the womb. But now here, let's imagine the baby is born and what are the other complications that could take place. So loss of oxygen to the brain, complication at the time of birth, then cesarean birth is likely to result in anoxia, temporary loss of oxygen to the brain, and then brain damage, then postnatal adjustments, all this issue, like you mentioned, the child was not able to speak for a year or some time. Then there are multiple births. So infants, and not infants, sorry, twins. So that could also, I recently, we in our family, a lady, she conceived two twins, a girl and a boy, and then at the 8th month they were not they're not, and they lost both the child. So all these are factors. Then post maturity, prematurity, if extra, like you might have heard about certain people, those who don't deliver even at the 9th month also. So post maturity and prematurity, like infants born at 7 months or 8 months or 6 months. So certain damage could happen due to certain both pre and post maturity. That's the physical hazards. Then talking about psychological hazards, the traditional belief earlier, especially in our country, we didn't in India, we didn't had many hospital facilities. Even till now also there are very less hospital facilities in certain part of the countries. So that is also one of the issues. Then helplessness, so how infants, if they are not under hospital and proper care, then that could be helplessness on part of the mother and the child. Attitude of parents, if proper understanding is not done. Okay, if proper development. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So if proper development is not there, then we could expect certain attitudes of parents. So, gender preferences, like I mentioned, there are certain countries who want just boy or just females, all this stuff. So you will see this, and then unexpected arrival of twins of triplets. So it's really difficult. I know some cases where um, like in a family, again, I know there was this aunt who would have like triplets every time. So she has 4 daughters, and then she would have triplets every time, but the two, so every time only one of the baby would survive. So and that's a problem, then physical development in infancy. So we can have a look. You can also read what are the physical development. So brain weight and how brain develops during infancy, growth and size, it depends on environmental conditions, the genetic endowment. We also talk about the 2 laws, and then the maturation that happens, and the growth between 12 to 15 years, pituitary gland, the release of hormones, the environmental factors, all this they're talking about. Psychological development, we'll see the theory of Erickson, the proper, we'll see that into detail. So Erickson's theory, Piaget's cognitive theory, all this we're going to read. We'll see them in detail, and please make sure that you read these once so that I can explain the theories, and then you understand it better. Then we also have this concept of attachment with the parent, and it was given by Ainsworth and Associates in 1978. So she has talked about different attachment style we have throughout our lives, and then you know, then smiling, the social smile, and the happy smile. All this they're talking about the smiles, the anxiety. So I mean, if the child doesn't crawl at the even at the 10 months around, then there could be an anxiety for the mother and why they're not crawling or why they're not walking. So there are children who will not walk till 3 to 4 years, and then parents would take them to speech therapies, and they're very worried about them. The fear of strangers. So parents working, children are left to certain strangers, maybe school, preschool or something, play school or something. That's create an anxiety, stranger anxiety in the child. So psychologically, we have to read all this. Then cognitive development in infancy. So cognitive development, this theory is again related to Piaget. I'll explain that, just a particular theory. I'll not explain here. All the theories I'll explain it in one go so that you can compare them also. So it's already here. Okay, so I can just mention, but I'll explain them in maybe later, in a later time. So sensory motor stage, pre-operational, concrete operational, formal operational. So all these are the stages that had been mentioned. So the interesting thing about Piaget is that he didn't conducted this experiment on some other children. He had his own 3 children and he conducted on them, and he came to this theory. Then what are the different changes that takes place at the sensory motor stage? The reflex, the primary reaction, secondary circular reaction, coordination of secondary reaction, tertiary circular, or early representational. All these they are done from birth to 2 years. That happens at the infants. Then phonetic, semantic. I think we already. Do you remember all this? Phonetic, semantics, grammar, pragmatics. In the language and acquisition, we talked about that.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Okay. So the unit 4, it talks about early childhood. It talks about the different development that takes place. So what I mean, UNESCO has given a certain definition of who a child is, at what age the children will be going to school. Then the characteristics of early childhood, they have mentioned about this, the hazards that takes place during early childhood. So physical hazards would include illness, accidents, obesity. Psychological would include the speech, social, play, moral hazards, growth and development in early childhood. All this takes place. Then physical development, height, weight, body build, motor skills, brain development, body proportion and shape. Then social, psychosocial development in early childhood. Okay, I think I really need to explain the theory now. Okay, so here they've talked about Piaget's theory and Erickson's theory. So let me take you to the theory only. So here we come to unit 4 also, that is from block 1. But 2 theories are very important to read in this. Let me explain that. So first of all, we'll understand Piaget's theory of cognitive development. So he has just talked about cognitive development at this age. So the first stage, according to him, is the sensory motor stage that happens at the age of 0 to 2 years old. So here the child coordinates with the motor responses. So the sensory responses, the child is very curious, and the language use is done, and object permanence is developed. So object permanence. So for example, if you for till the age of 6 to 8 months, if you have certain objects in front of them, they would, if you remove them, they will not cry. But after 6 to 8 months, it could be different for every individual. For a child, maybe when he was 6 year old, the object permanence, the concept of object permanence has developed. So if you remove the phone, maybe just a phone, let's take an example of a phone. If you remove the phone, the child would cry for that item, that they need the phone. So that, but before 6 months or before 6 to 8 months, let's take an average. So if you remove the items also, they will not cry, they will not know about it. But when they know, so that concept is known as object permanence. And then that is what one of the development that happens. And there are certain studies which says that the child doesn't, they're not able to see their mother properly, or the individuals properly. They don't remember their mother also, they just remember them with the smell. There are certain studies that's talked about, that has claimed that. So all these changes takes place due to their coordination. There is a coordination, there are certain responses, curiosity, then language development happens. and it happens from 0 to 2 years, and that stage is known as sensory motor. Then at the pre-operational stage, that is 2 to 7 years, uh, it is known as simple symbolic thinking. Their grammars are developed. They they use their language, and then egocentric. So the cognitive development that takes place at this age is the egocentric, the concept of egocentric. So for example, if you can, let me show you an example through. Hmm. Okay, so there is no picture, I think, but yes, I'll explain that. They talk egocentric. They don't want to understand the viewpoint of other individuals. So, for example, if they want ice cream, they will cry, and then they would want at any rate. So, but as a child grows, maybe after certain again, so Piaget has given an age group, but it doesn't mean that it is applicable to all the individuals, all the children in the world, but it could, for some children it could develop. The concept of egocentrism could come after some years. Maybe at 11 years they are able to understand other viewpoints, on not quickly. So that's one, egocentrism is developed in this age. Then another is conservation. So conservation. Okay, so here, as you can see here, so children at this age, uh, even if, so as you can see, there are two glasses. So the children, they will think that this is a bigger one because it's a long, and many items could be stored here, more item could be stored here. And even if this is broad, but it seems small, right? So they will say, if we ask them that which has more water or something, they would say that this bottle has more water. It's this glass, sorry, not this. Why? So the concept of conservation doesn't get developed in them till 2 to 7 years also. I mean, till 7 years, because before two, though, they are very young, so it cannot be developed. So as you can see, when they were asked which has more water, then the child will say that this has more item. So this is known as conservation task. And if you remember, we used to fight with our siblings that they have got more Maggie if they were served in bigger plates, in a large plate. So that's one thing. So conservation and egocentrism, that development takes place at this age. Then concrete operational. So the child is now they're in the age group of 7 to 11 years, and they have then independent thinking. Language development takes place over here. They were just learning certain languages, one word, two words. Now their semantics, they learn semantics, grammars, and phonologies, and all this situation takes place at this age. Concrete operational. And then the last one is formal operational. So at this age, they have this logical thinking, they have this counterfactual thinking, hypothetical. They can understand certain situation, they can understand theories, they can understand hypothetical situation, counterfactual thinking, or abstract thinking, reasoning, logical reasoning, abstract reasoning. All this could be understood at this age. So they are now 11 years and older, and they get interested in they're very competitive now, and they want to know the world, they want to explore the world. They understand moral responsibility, all this stuff, right? So this is the Piaget's theory. Any question on this? If you want a graphical presentation, here it is. So sensory motor stage, playing with, interacting with the environment. The child begins to represent the world symbolically, and also they have this concept, if they're hurt by a table, they will beat them up. If we beat the child, if we beat the if we beat the table, if we please mute yourself, class. And then concrete operational conservation, 2 to 7 years they will not understand, but between 7 to 11 years they know, okay, now which one is larger, which bottle is larger, they will understand. And then at the formal operational, they are more into thinking, they have their interests, their language, their politics, their relationships, all this. Okay. Then next we have Erickson's theory. I forgot the spelling, I guess. Okay. So here is the Erickson stage. It is divided into 8 stages. The first is the trust versus mistrust. So it is known as psychosexual development stages theory. So trust versus mistrust, and if the needs of the baby, they are met properly, then they would trust their caregivers. Otherwise, they could develop mistrust in them. Okay. Then next is autonomy versus shame guilt. So this happens at the age when they're infants to 18 months. Then this is 18 months to 2 years. No, sorry, 3 years. Autonomy versus shame. So they take initiatives. They doubt their abilities. They want to take initiative and they want to play. If they appreciate it, they will be happy. Otherwise, they feel shy and there's a doubt that are they doing the right thing or not. They're always conscious that they will be scolded by their elders or mothers. Then next is initiative versus guilt. So this happens between 3 to 5 years. So the schoolers, the preschoolers, they learn to take initiative. They carry out plans, and if they don't carry out plans properly, if they don't take initiative, they feel guilty about that they're not able to do it independently. So they want to write, maybe they want to read and write, and they're not able to do. They will feel guilty that they're not a good child. Then industry versus inferiority, it happens between 15 to 13 years. So children learn the pleasure of applying themselves to tasks and they feel inferior again. So over here, it's a it happens between 15 to 13 years, and then they want to take different initiatives. They want to learn different subjects. And if they're not able to fulfill again the expectations of others, then they feel inferior. They feel that they're not a good individuals. So that's between 15 to 13 years. Then 13 to 21 years, identity versus confusion. So you might have heard about certain statements from the parents that when the child gets indulged in an adult conversation, the parents would say, you're still very young, don't get indulged in certain conversation. But when the parents want to want their children to take certain responsibility, they would say, you are young, you are an adult now, why aren't you taking certain responsibility? You can't be so irresponsible. So there's a confusion, are they adult or are they young? So identity versus confusion. So what exactly their identity is, that's what they have this issues. The next is intimacy versus isolation. 21 to 39 years old individuals have this thing. So they are more into now they want their relationship, they want stability. They decide about their career, their social friends, their circles, all this. So if they successfully have, if they have friends, if they have relationship, if everything is fine, then they would enjoy the stage. Otherwise, they could lead to isolation also. The next is generative versus stagnation. So here they are 40 to 65-year-old now. So over here they want care, they want to give care, they want to have good friends, family, work-life balance should be there. Now they may have certain purpose in life, what they want to do. People may change careers if they're not happy with their career. So they want stability at this age as well. But if they're not, if they feel that they don't have a purpose of life, they will feel stagnant in their life. Otherwise, they will feel that they are they have some contribution to the society. The next is integrity versus despair. So when reflecting on his or her life, so now 65 and older, people, they have this wisdom that they always interpret and introspect that what they have done in their life, are they satisfied? Is there any sense of satisfaction, or is there a sense of failure in their life? All this comes to their question. If they're happy with what they've achieved, then they would integrate, otherwise they'll feel despair. So this is the Erickson's theory. Do you find any common between these two theories? Anything common between Erickson's theory and Piaget's theory?
Miss, I find that Erickson spoke a lot about this social development, psychosocial development.
Yes.
Whereas Piaget focused more on cognitive development.
Even Erickson has talked about, if you see for young babies like trust versus mistrust, autonomy, all this, till this age, even he has talked about cognitive development as well, you know. So, initiative, taking initiative, or feeling inferiority, all this has been talked about.
But the two complement each other. So as a social worker, those are
Yeah.
two theories that are go-to two theories.
Yes, you can see more of social development in Erickson's theory, society, and but he has talked overall, both physical, social, cognitive, and many other factors. So, anyways, you can find certain studies and read about them. What are the similarities between these two theories, and what are the dissimilarities? All right. Okay, so these two theories are very important. Then next, I wanted to talk about moral development, Kohlberg's moral development. On this, I wanted to show you a video. We'll talk about this theory tomorrow, but I just want you all to see this video. Okay. I'll explain this theory tomorrow. I will wind up here, but before we wind up the class, please have look at this video. It's a very short
My
video.
job is to make college easier because students have a lot of fun. Lawrence Kohlberg's theory claims that our development of moral reasoning happens in 6 stages. The stages themselves are structured in 3 levels: pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. To understand this better, imagine a conflict at school. There is a fight in the schoolyard. 2 ninth graders are beating up Tom. Those who watch the fight are at different stages of moral development. Let's see what they do and how they justify their behavior. At stage 1, we make moral judgments based on obedience and punishment. Finn's sense of good or bad is directly linked to whether he gets punished or not. Finn sees what is happening to his friend and wants to help, but he doesn't because he is afraid the teacher may punish him if he gets caught fighting. He asks himself, how can I avoid punishment? At stage 2, we are motivated by self-interest. Mary decides to intervene and help Tom. She knows that she might get punished, but she also knows that she could become a victim herself someday. If she helps Tom now, he might help her in the future. She is asking herself, what's in it for me? At stage 3, interpersonal accord and conformity guide our moral judgment. Betty sees the fight and wants to intervene, but when she realizes that all the others are just watching, she decides not to get involved. She wants others to see that she is a good girl who is conforming with the ethics of the community. She asks herself, what do others think of me? At stage 4, we value authority and want to maintain social order. When the teacher sees the group fighting, he immediately steps in and shouts, "Stop! Fighting at school is forbidden." He feels that, above all, it is important to follow the rules, otherwise chaos breaks out. He feels it is his duty to uphold the rules that sustain a functioning society. He asks himself, how can I maintain law and order? At stage 5, we understand rules as a social contract, as opposed to a strict order. Jessie, who watches from afar, is not sure how she feels about this. To her, rules make sense only if they serve the right purpose. Obviously, the school rules prohibit fighting, but maybe Tom deserves to finally learn his lesson. Just yesterday, he punched a young girl from grade 1. She asks herself, does a rule truly serve all members of the community? At stage 6, we are guided by universal ethical principles. All those involved now have to face the headmaster. He first explains the school rules and why they exist. He then clarifies that rules are valid only if they are grounded in justice. The commitment to justice carries with it an obligation to disobey unjust rules. The headmaster's highest moral principle is compassion. He believes that all people should learn to understand each other's viewpoints and that they don't feel alone with their feelings. He asks, what are the abstract ethical principles that serve my understandings of justice? At the pre-conventional level, Finn is driven by fear and Mary by self-interest. Both judge what is right or wrong by the direct consequences they expect for themselves and not by social norms. This form of reasoning is common among children. At the conventional level, Betty responds to peer pressure, and the teacher follows the rules. Their morality is centered around what society regards as right. At this level, the fairness of rules is seldom questioned. It is common to think like this during adolescence and adulthood. At the post-conventional level, Jessie knows that things are complicated because individuals may disobey rules inconsistent with their own morality. The headmaster follows a universal ethical idea, at complete disconnect with what society thinks or the rules say. To him, everything is solved through compassion. The right behavior, in his opinion, is therefore never a means to an end, but always an end in itself. Not every person reaches this level. The American psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg based his work on Piaget's theory of cognitive development. In order to confirm his theory of stages of moral development, Kohlberg interviewed boys between the ages of 10 and 16. He analyzed how they would justify their decision when confronted with different hypothetical moral dilemmas. We will now present to you the most famous moral dilemma Kohlberg presented to his students. Let's see what you would do. The Heinz Dilemma. A woman was on her deathbed. There was only one drug that the doctors thought might save her. The druggist that made that particular medicine sold it for 10 times the price of the production costs. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, was poor and could not afford to buy the drug, not even with the financial help of his friends. Heinz then asked the pharmacist to sell it to him for half the price, but he refused. To save the life of his wife, Heinz broke into the man's laboratory and stole the medicine. Now tell us, should Heinz have stolen the drug? Would it change anything if Heinz didn't love his wife? What if the person dying was not his wife, but a stranger? Should the police arrest the druggist for murder if the wife had died? Please write your answers and their justifications in the comments below.
Yes, class. So this is one of the very famous theory in the field of psychology, moral development. So you have seen that we have theories on cognitive development, moral development, and psychosocial, and even in psychosexual development, you'll study that in MPC-3 by Sigmund Freud. You are going to read that, but these are very, very famous, and you should know all this theory. So Erickson's Kohlberg's theory, it's in the later topic that would come, but I just wanted you all to watch this video. So, as you can see, this Kohlberg, the theory of moral development, it was studied by interviewing 10 to 16-year-old children, boys especially, and they were given a certain situation. It was, they were given a case study, the Heinz Dilemma, and based on that, the conclusion was that there are three stages, three levels, and six stages: conventional, post, pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. So that's what they've talked about. We'll see this in detail later in the class. So any questions as of now from Piaget's theory and Erickson's theory? Maybe we can have a small video on Piaget's theory as well,
From the very start,
because
we
we have
had a
already
big on
talked
Shopify.
about
We
this.
built the website all by ourselves. Hi,
Piaget's theory argues that we have to.
So since we've already discussed about this theory, let's watch a video also on this so that we can have a better understanding.
Four stages of cognitive development. First, the sensory motor stage. Second, the pre-operational stage. Third, the concrete operational stage. And fourth, the formal operational stage. Only once we have gone through all the stages, at what age can vary, we are able to reach full human intelligence. 1. The sensory motor stage, ages birth to 2. In the sensory motor stage, We develop through experiences and movement our five senses. Our brain wants to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch as much as possible. First, we start with simple reflexes, and soon after, we develop our first habits. From 4 months old, we become aware of things beyond our own body, and then as we get older, we learn to do things intentionally. A key milestone is the development of working memory, or in Piaget terms, our realization of object permanence. Before that, our mum can show and then hide a teddy, and we would think it's gone. After, we understand that objects continue to exist, even when we can't see them. We start becoming curious about everything. We want to smell flowers, taste food, listen to sounds, and talk to strangers. To explore more, we move. We learn to sit, crawl, stand, walk, and even to run. This increased physical mobility consequently leads to increased cognitive development. But we remain egocentric, meaning we can perceive the world only from our own point of view. 2. The pre-operational stage, ages 2 to 7. Our thinking is mainly categorized through symbolic functions and intuitive thoughts. We have lots of fantasies and believe objects are alive. As we are not able to apply specific cognitive operations, Piaget calls this stage pre-operational. We learn to speak and understand that words, images, and gestures are symbols for something else. When we draw our family, we are not concerned about drawing each person to scale, but rather with their symbolic meanings. We love to play pretend, which allows us to experience something new and learn a lot. At around age 4, most of us become very curious and ask many questions. We want to know everything. We can call it the birth of primitive reasoning. Piaget calls it the intuitive age, because while we realize that we have a vast amount of knowledge, we have no idea how we acquired it. Our thinking in this stage is still pretty egocentric. We think others see the world like we do, and still don't understand that they see it differently. 3. The concrete operational stage, ages 7 to 11. We finally discover logic, and we develop concrete cognitive operations, such as sorting objects in a certain order. One example of this is inductive reasoning, which means that if we see someone eating a cookie, we can draw a conclusion and then make a generalization. And we now get the concept of conservation. We understand that if we pour orange juice from a normal glass to a taller one, the amount stays the same. Our younger sister will pick the taller glass, thinking she gets more. By the same logic, we only now can understand that if 3 plus 5 equals 8, then 8 minus 3 must equal 5. Our brain learns to rearrange our thoughts, to classify and build concrete operational mental structures. For example, we now know that we can reverse an action by doing the opposite. Excited by our new mental abilities, we apply them in conversations, activities, when we learn to write, and in school. As a result, we get to know ourselves better. We begin to understand that our thoughts and feelings are unique and not necessarily those of others. That means that we learn to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. 4. The formal operational stage, age 12 plus. Once we become teenagers, we become formally operational. We now have the ability to think more rationally about abstract concepts and hypothetical events. Our advanced cognitive abilities allow us to understand abstract concepts such as success and failure, love and hate. We form a deeper understanding of our own identity and our morality. We now also think that we understand why people behave the way they behave, and as a result, can become more compassionate. Our brain can now do deductive reasoning, which means we can compare two statements and reach a logical generalization. Our new mental skills allow us to plan our life systematically and prioritize, and we can make assumptions about events that have no necessary relation to reality. We can now also philosophize and just think about thinking itself. Our new sense for our identity now also creates egocentric thoughts, and some start to see an imaginary audience watching them all the time. Piaget believed in lifelong learning, but insisted that the formal operational stage is the final stage of our cognitive development. Jean Piaget's first interests were animals, and he published his first scientific paper on albino sparrows in 1907, when he was just 11 years old. In 1920, he began working with standardized intelligence tests. He realized that younger children consistently make types of mistakes that older children do not. He concluded that they must think differently, and spent the rest of his life studying the intellectual development of children.
Miss, I have a question to ask.
Yes.
Could Sigmund Freud, 5 stages of psychosexual, interlink with Erickson, 8 stages of psychosocial, and John Piaget stages?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, in the sense that you will find similarity between all this theory, the moral development, Erickson's theory, Jean Piaget's theory, and Sigmund Freud theory. Then, yeah. So, whoever psychologist we have, all these they are interrelated. So you will find some similarities and you'll find differences also. So I can give you all some work. You can today what you can do is, yeah, you are already well aware with Erickson's theory and Piaget's theory. And if you are interested, maybe you can read Sigmund Freud's theory and understand what are the similarities and differences between them. Okay. And since we have already talked about Piaget's theory also. One second, where did it go? Yeah, Erickson's theory. Since I've already discussed, I think we can have a look on this as well.
My job is to make college easier because students have a lot on them.
Erickson's theory of psychosocial development identifies 8 stages which a healthy individual should pass through from birth to death. At each stage, we encounter different needs, ask new questions, and meet people who influence our behavior and learning. Stage 1. Basic trust versus mistrust. As infants, we ask ourselves if we can trust the world, and we wonder if it's safe. We learn that if we can trust someone now, we can also trust others in the future. If we experience fear, we develop doubt and mistrust. The key to our development is our mother. Stage 2. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. In our early childhood, we experience ourselves and discover our body. We ask, is it okay to be me? If we are allowed to discover ourselves, then we develop self-confidence. If we are not, we can develop shame and self-doubt. Both parents now play a major role. Stage 3. Initiative versus guilt. In preschool, we take initiative, try out new things, and learn basic principles like how round things roll. We ask, is it okay for me to do what I do? If we are encouraged, we can follow our interests. If we are held back or told that what we do is silly, we can develop guilt. We are now learning from the entire family. Stage 4. Industry versus inferiority. Now we discover our own interests and realize that we are different from others. We want to show that we can do things right. We ask if we can make it in this world. If we receive recognition from our teachers or peers, we become industrious, which is another word for hardworking. If we get too much negative feedback, we start to feel inferior and lose motivation. Our neighbors and schools now influence us the most. Stage 5. Identity versus role confusion. During adolescence, we learn that we have different social roles. We are friends, students, children, and citizens. Many experience an identity crisis. If our parents now allow us to go out and explore, we can find identity. If they push us to conform to their views, we can face role confusion and feel lost. Key to our learning are our peers and role models. Stage 6. Intimacy versus isolation. As young adults, we slowly understand who we are, and we start to let go of the relationships we had built earlier in order to fit in. We ask ourselves if we can love. If we can make a long-term commitment, we are confident and happy. If we cannot form intimate relationships, we might end up feeling isolated and lonely. Our friends and partners are now central to our development. Stage 7. Generativity versus stagnation. When we reach our 40s, we become comfortable, use our leisure time creatively, and maybe begin contributing to society. Our concern is generativity. If we think that we are able to lead the next generation into this world, we are happy. If we did not resolve some conflicts earlier, we can become pessimistic and experience stagnation. People at home and at work are now who influences the most. Stage 8. Ego integrity versus despair. As we grow older, we tend to slow down and begin to look back over our lives. We ask, how have I done? If we think we did well, we develop feelings of contentment and integrity. If not, we can experience despair and become grumpy and bitter. Time to compare us with mankind. Erickson was a German-American psychologist who, together with his wife Joan, became known for his work on psychosocial development. He was influenced by Sigmund and Anna Freud and became famous for coining the phrase identity crisis. Although Erickson lacked even a bachelor's degree, he served as a professor at Harvard and Yale.
Oh, yes, class. So, how is it?
Great, miss.
Exciting, miss.
Yes, so you'll have to read all these theories. They're very simple and easy, but you'll have to read research papers and different research papers. And so these are some theories which has been, conducted long back. But you can read some research papers. What are the current reviews? What are the current issues in this field? And you can go through them and read them. So here
Miss,
we come. Yes, yes, Charmin.
please share a link for the videos.
Yeah, they're interesting. Sorry, you want the link? That's what you said?
Yes, miss.
Okay, sure. I'll just share the link.
Thank you.
So,
So, ma'am, hello?
yes.
Yes, ma'am. I just want to confirm on the anti-D injection. I would have found out for those of us who just want to confirm. So, for the RH incompatibility, I would have found out from a gynecologist specialist, OBGYN, because protocols change over the years. And so it's important to know what's the new protocol, especially in Guyana. Now, internationally, the anti-D or the Rogram injection for RH negative mothers should be given ideally at 28 weeks of pregnancy. However, it's a very expensive injection and it lasts for 12 weeks, so it would have to be repeated again at 40 weeks, but sometimes some women would deliver after 40 weeks. So what the gynecologist is saying is that in Guyana, we don't give it at 28 weeks. because of it's very expensive. So what they do when a woman goes into deliver, they do a test called indirect Holmes test, and when that test shows up negative, they give the anti-D to that mother within 72 hours after the delivery to prevent any future reaction in future pregnancies then. So it's within 72 hours after delivery in Guyana and as soon as possible after an abortion. Sometimes it can take up to 7 days after an abortion, but they advise it as soon as possible. So that's the latest information on the anti-D.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. That's a very informative information.
Thank you for that
Thank you.
information.
Yes, it's a very, very important information. Yes, that's great. Uh, yeah, so it depends from country to country also, and from different gynecologists and patients differs. But yes, there are certain things which could remain stable and across the countries. So this is all about MPC 2 Block 1, and we'll talk about MPC 2 Block 2 and 3 and 4. We have three more classes, so we'll take one block every day, and then we'll talk about the theories, right? So okay. So any questions? And if you don't have any questions, then we can wind up the class. Plus, you also have to read and understand. I think this theory, these videos are very informative and they're very interesting. Also, you'll be better able to understand. But at the same time, do find research studies on critical evaluation. What critical
Good morning,
evaluation? What are
miss.
the limitations of all these studies? You know? Yes. Good morning, Miss Chase.
Hi, Miss. What I just
Yes. Good
wanted to
morning.
confirm, right? Although all these theories would have their own stages and focusing mainly on because like the Piaget he focused on cognitive and then the other one spoke about psychosocial and then we had the moral, right? Although they have they're focusing differently, I still think that there's some kind of connection between all of them. Because for example, where you were showing the video, where they had the fight, right? They would have had to have some kind of social interaction to cause that to happen and figuring out whether I should help or not. So I still see that they're connecting in some sort of a way. I don't know if I'm wrong.
Yes, yes. No, no, you're not wrong. You're absolutely right. You remember in the video, it has also been shown that Erickson, he was influenced by Sigmund Freud and Anna Freud. And based on his theory, he came to this identity crisis and many other terms. So, yes, in lifespan, you'll find there is a connection between all this. So, you remember in MPC 1, we talked about the different theories of language development, the interactionist, the nativist, the behaviorist, the language acquisition device. So all this, they are interrelated in the same manner. This all this theory also, they are interrelated. So you'll find common similarities between Jean Piaget's, Erickson, Lawrence Kohlberg, Freud, all this theory, they're interrelated. You're absolutely correct. And one theory is developed after one theory. They are influenced by each other. There is a connection. There are similarities and dissimilarities also, but there are certain limitations also as well. So limitations, that's your work now. What you have already, like you are well aware of the theories now. Now you all have to study what is the limitation, what is the critical evaluation. Is there any limitation to these theories or not? That's what you're going to do. Am I done? Am I clear? Yes.
Yes.
That
Yes,
was
miss.
good.
Yeah. So we have gone through block 1 also. In block 1, we have 4 units. So we have gone through all those. And we talked about the RH incompatibility. And Sadhana has also brought a very informative news and informative information on how which injection is used and under what time it has to be used. So that's all these things are there. Yeah. So
And I think MPC Block 2 Unit 1 is very much interesting and applicable, especially when it comes to the teachers. So you'll
yes.
find persons will dive into it and want to read and get a better understanding.
Yes. So read all these notes and the handbooks. They're very interesting. Otherwise, like I mentioned, that all these theories, for me, all these theories, your questions will revolve around this, and in your day-to-day life, also, you're going to apply some of the other theories in your with your children in your school, if you're a teacher, or if you're some kind of professional. Erickson's theory, it could apply to every stage of life, right? So all this, they're applicable. Why not? So yeah, please make a use of, read the notes and understand better. It will help you understand better and read your notes. Okay, then I'll see you tomorrow. Not able to talk with you all with much energy. Been unwell since morning.
Miss, thank you anyhow.
Well,
You
we
did
are
a great
hoping that
job,
you
Miss. We
get
really appreciate
well.
you
Yes,
still
thank
working with
you.
us, even though you weren't feeling well. Get lots of rest today.
Yes,
Drink a lot of
I'll do
fluid.
that.
Yes, miss. So we're hoping you get well.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Yes, miss. That's why I was saying you should finish early because I was
Bye-bye.